What's up everyone, my name's Taylor Nemechek, and this is Who's That Saint? Today we're going to be tackling a giant of a saint. And not only that, for some of you, he was actually alive during your lifetimes. So who are we talking about today? Saint Padre Pio. So the question is, who is Saint Padre Pio? A lot of you probably already know quite a bit about Saint Padre Pio, but if you don't, that's alright, because you're in the right spot. And after this video, if you feel like you want to know more or get to know Saint Padre Pio a little more, or if you're just interested in Saint Padre Pio, I would recommend this documentary called Padre Pio. It's a really phenomenal film. It's very long, there's 2 discs, so it's pretty lengthy, but it's phenomenal and just says a whole lot about his story and really portrays his story quite well. Anyway, Saint Padre Pio was born in Pietrelcina, Italy on May 25th, 1887. His parents were peasant farmers and he had 4 siblings, an older brother and 3 younger sisters. There were also two other children that died in infancy. And Francesco was very religious from a young age, and even at the age of 5, he decided to dedicate his life to God. And his parents were also really religious, so this really helped in young Francesco's religious formation, and so he had a lot of support in his Catholic development. And he would attend daily Mass, and he would often serve as an altar boy at these Masses. And he was known for taking penances. Sometimes the penances would even be pretty severe. And on one time, his mother scolded him because he was sleeping on this bare stone floor. So a really cold, really freezing place to sleep, but it was a severe penance that he was taking on. And even in his young age, Francesco could see guardian angels, and he would often speak to Jesus and the Virgin Mary. And this was never something that was taught to him, so he just assumed everyone, all of us, could see the guardian angels, and we could just, would always have our nice little conversations with Jesus and Mary, and that was just a common everyday thing. As I mentioned, Francesco's parents were just peasant farmers, so his family was very poor, which made Francesco have to work to help provide and support for the family. And his family had a small flock of sheep that he spent several years tending. And having to work meant that he wasn't able to attend school regularly, which meant that he was quickly falling behind in his studies. And on top of all of this, he dealt with several health issues. Starting young, even at the age of 5 and 6, and when he was 10 years old, he had typhoid fever. Also, while Francesco was just 10 years old, after only 3 years of schooling, he made the decision that he wanted to become a friar, and he told this to his parents, who were completely supportive in this decision. So his parents traveled to the nearby community of monks and asked if he could join. And even though he was extremely young to be making such a big decision, they evaluated him, but they determined that he needed more education before he could join. So to prepare Francesco, his parents hired a private tutor to help him catch up in his schooling. And to pay for the tutor, his father traveled to America to find work, and so that he could send the money back home. So after 5 more years of schooling, when Francesco was about 15 years old, he entered the novitiate for the Capuchin friars, and took the name Pio in honor of Pope Pius I. And then at the age of 17, Francesco, never getting over his health issues, he got really sick again, and all he was able to digest during this time was cheese and milk. So thinking it would aid him, he was sent to the mountains for fresher air. But in his time at the mountains, nothing helped him, nothing made him better, so he was sent back to his family. But throughout all of the sickness and throughout all the travel, none of it stopped him from studying for the priesthood. Brother Pio quickly became known for his extremely deep and intense prayer. One time, one of Pio's brother monks saw him levitating during an episode of ecstasy while he was in prayer. And at the age of 23, in the year of 1910, Brother Pio was ordained into the priesthood, but he was permitted to stay home because of his health conditions. In 1915, with World War I going on, Padre Pio was summoned for military service, but after a couple times of being sent home and then recalled back into service, he was finally just dismissed because his health conditions were not allowing him to do anything for the military. But then a year later, on September 20th, while he was hearing confessions, Padre Pio felt an immense pain in his hands and feet, and as he watched, he noticed the stigmata, which are the wounds of Christ, appearing in his hands and feet. And the wounds bled, but they smelled of roses. And though the wounds never healed or never closed up, they never became infected. And later, doctors spent a lot of time examining these wounds, and they were always amazed at how perfectly round the wounds were. By the year of 1919, word of Padre Pio had spread far and wide, and people were coming from all over to see him. And many miracles and supernatural occurrences were being attributed to him. And this newfound fame was really concerning to the church, and Pio himself was very uncomfortable with the fame that was coming to him. And in the church's concern, the Vatican started restricting Pio's public appearances, and he was even restricted from saying the Mass for some time. And this was just absolutely aggravating and torturous to Padre Pio. But he obeyed in his obedience and followed these restrictions. But by 1934, the church dove into some more investigation into the stigmata wounds, and they were proof that Pio's condition was not faked. And so the Vatican began to change its attitude towards Padre Pio, and he was allowed to say masses again and to preach. And Pope Pius XI even began to encourage people to visit Padre Pio, so there was quite a bit of a turnaround there. In 1947, Father Karol Wojtyła, or as you all might better recognize him as Saint Pope John Paul II, visited Padre Pio, and in this visit, Padre Pio prophetically told the young Wojtyła that he was going to reach the highest post in the church. And what do you know? In 1978, Karol Wojtyła became Pope John Paul II. And then another interesting story regarding JP2 was that at one point, someone that he was really close to became extremely ill, and it was not looking like they were going to make it. So JP2, not knowing what else to do, wrote a letter to Padre Pio asking for his prayers. And this close friend of JP2's suddenly miraculously was healed. And so JP2 wrote a letter of joy and gratitude to Padre Pio. And in receiving the letter, Pio told his secretary, "Keep this, we will need it later." With his popularity, Pio was able to open a hospital in San Giovanni Rotondo in 1956. And Padre Pio became internationally famous for his piety, charity, and the quality of his preaching. And he was also known to be able to read people's sins and to even bilocate. And he was also, on many occasions, tempted by the devil and was often even physically attacked by Satan. On top of all this, Padre Pio's health conditions never left him. Among all the other ailments he also had cancer, which this cancer was miraculously healed after only 2 treatments. But there were other problems like arthritis, which never went away. And Padre Pio died on September 23rd in the year of 1968. And at his funeral, over 100,000 people attended. Having seen the influence this great man had firsthand, Pope John Paul II canonized Padre Pio as a saint on June 16, 2002. And he is the patron saint of civil defense volunteers, adolescents, and the village of Pietrelcina. This man truly lived up to his name in his piety and in his love for God. So let us ask for his intercession as we strive to be true men and women of God, and as we strive to have that piety and that relationship with God, and as we fight in this battle of good and evil. So Saint Padre Pio, pray for us. And there's our answer to who is Saint Padre Pio. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something you didn't already know about this phenomenal saint. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the like button, and leave any comments below of any saints you'd like to see on future episodes, or any topics you'd like to be seen on other videos here on this channel. And make sure to share with friends and family, and continually pray to St. Padre Pio's intercession throughout this week. And as always, stay tuned for next week's episode of Who's That Saint? We'll see you next time. God bless.